everybody and welcome to the first ever video of Cantabile College. Thank you so much for joining me, and today we will be talking about some basic periods of music for beginners who want to learn a little bit more about classical music. We will be looking at 4 eras today, and the first one will be the Baroque era. In Italy, it had a lot of complex and elaborate architecture that actually mimicked in its music. Some key features about the Baroque period are that it has a singular melodic line, it has homophonic texture, and the instruments used are strings, wind, harpsichord, and some light percussion for timbre. If you want to listen to some composers of this era, I would highly recommend Bach, Vivaldi, and Handel.
Okay, let's talk about Bach for a second. He was born on March the 21st, 1685, which was the same year when Handel was born. Living in Germany, he grew up and conceived 20 children, which I think you can agree must have been quite a handful. An interesting fact about Bach's music was that he used to use a kind of mystical numerology technique to sign his own name. He used the numbers 14 and 41 into his works as a kind of signature. Now, you may not believe this, but Bach actually went to prison once. The reason is actually because a man he worked for wanted to make sure Bach wouldn't leave his services of composing, and therefore put him in jail so that he couldn't work for anybody else. A little harsh in my opinion. However, during his time behind bars, Bach was able to compose his study for the organ. The reason to Bach's death was actually due to his bad eyesight. He struggled with this throughout his life, and due to a series of bad operations and doctors, Bach sadly died in the hands of John Taylor after receiving eye surgery from him. The lesson here, guys, is to keep your eyes open for any bad surgeons around, I think.
Moving straight into the classical era now, and the music becomes a lot less functional and church-based and turns into a lot more of a kind of art form. The texture of the music is a lot less complex and the lines are a lot clearer and lighter. It's filled with lyrical lines and chordal harmony for a really beautiful sound. Some really good composers for this era to listen to would be Beethoven, Mozart, and Schubert.
Now, the date of Beethoven's birth has been questioned for many years. It was said that he was born in Germany in 1770, but his father used to say that he was born in 1772. The reason for this was so that his son would seem even more of a prodigy than he was. A violin player at a young age, and whichever year he was born in, he was a very advanced musician and composer. There are said to be 3 periods of Beethoven's compositional life. The early stage includes his symphonies No. 1 and 2, a set of 6 string quartets, piano concertos 1 and 2, and a dozen piano sonatas. His second period was known to be filled with much more emotion and was called the Heroic period. This includes works such as his Fidelio opera, his Third Symphony, and the famous Moonlight Sonata. His third and final period was a display of his musical genius. A particular favourite work of mine being his Ninth Symphony included a choral finale. Have a listen to the recording I have linked in the description of the National Youth Orchestra playing at the proms. Quick side note, I am proud to say that I was sitting in that orchestra. At the young age of 25 years old, Beethoven sadly started to lose his ability to hear, but the cause of his death was actually due to his excessive drinking habits. Being a bit of a party animal, his final words were thought to have been, "Applaud, friends, the comedy has ended," in Latin.
The next era we will be talking about is my personal favourite, and that is the Romantic era. The lyrical melodies that were demonstrated in the classical era have really expanded now into a lot more song-like melodies. There are a lot more brand new ideas being explored, like discords and chromatic harmonies. This whole era is very, very dramatic. All the pitches and all the dynamics are really contrasting in quite a short amount of time. This was a very key era for brass players as the valve was invented around this time. Therefore, the orchestration expanded and the music became a lot bigger and fuller to listen to. My 3 personal favourite composers to listen to of this era are Chopin, Tchaikovsky, and Brahms.
Born in Russia 1840, Tchaikovsky grew up with 4 brothers and 1 sister. He was an intelligent child and was able to speak fluent German and French by the age of 6 years old. He was a civil servant before he became a composer, and when he was studying at Cambridge University, he used to have lunch with the honorary doctors Sanson and Bruch in 1893. Sadly, Tchaikovsky was known to have suffered from severe depression due to the death of his mother in 1854 and the failed 13-year relationship he had with a student of his. His death was thought to have been suspicious. At first, people thought, like Beethoven, it was the reason of excessive drinking and smoking, but there are rumours that the cause of death could have been suicide. On another side note, a benefit from living in today's world rather than Tchaikovsky's is that depression and mental illness is recognised much more. If anybody needs help or somebody to talk to, I have left a link in the description to the Samaritans website for anybody who needs it.
The last era we will be talking about is actually an era that hasn't been completed yet, and it's the one we're in right now. That's the contemporary era. The lyrical melodies have been thrown out the window and the dissonant harmonies really show out, and there's a lot more complex rhythms involved. These complex rhythms really bring a sort of percussive sound that's brand new in the music world. Another interesting concept that has been introduced is synthetic and electronic sounds, and that's really something that hasn't been introduced before in music. Some fantastic composers to listen to are Eric Whitacre, John Adams and Philip Glass.
An American composer born in 1970, Eric Whitacre is best known for his beautiful choral compositions. He graduated the Juilliard School with a master's degree and was successful in creating the largest choir in the world by using a live webcast. A fun fact about this living composer is that he is actually not just a musician, but a model as well. A multi-talented man, it seems.
Okay guys, so time for a quick recap before we end this video. Firstly, it was the Baroque era. That included some singular melodic lines, a homophonic texture, and instrumentation was this. Have a listen to these guys to really get a good full idea of the Baroque era. Moving on to the classical era, and the texture is a lot less complex. The lyrical lines are really clear and a lot lighter, and there's a lot more chordal harmony involved. And these guys are great to listen to for this era. Then my personal favourite is the Romantic era. A lot more song-like melodies that have been expanded, chromatic harmonies and discords, and dramatic changes in dynamics and pitch. Not forgetting about the invention of the valve in brass instruments, contributing to the expanding orchestra. And have a listen to these guys to hear that expanding sound. Finally, the contemporary era, the one we are in right now. It's got dissonant harmonies, complex rhythms, and a lot less lyrical lines. There are synthetic, electronic, and a lot more percussive sounds introduced into this era. Have a listen to these guys to hear the unusual music. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I will put some links of the composers and some music to listen to in the description, and if there are any other information I can find or books to read, I will put those in there as well. There you have it. The first lesson of Cantabile College is complete. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye!